The rain had turned the auction yard into a mess of mud and old straw, the kind that clung to boots and made every step feel heavier than the last. People muttered beneath umbrellas and wide-brimmed hats, shoulders hunched against the cold. The stables were a symphony of restless horses, iron gates rattling, hooves stamping in protest. Above it all, the auctioneer's voice boomed from under the shelter of a wooden pavilion. Each lot number barked out like a final sentence. Buyers raised their numbered paddles, with lazy indifference or eager calculation. But when the next lot was led into the ring, a hush swept the crowd like a sudden wind. The stallion was huge, a dark mahogany beast with white eyes, and the sort of scars that told a story no one dared speak aloud. He snorted, ears flattened, his muscles rippling beneath the rain-slick coat as he twisted against the lead rope. The stable hand holding him had two others flanking him for safety, all three sweating despite the cold. "Lot number 73, the auctioneer called, voice laced with warning. "You all know him. Untamable. Broke two fences, dislocated a handler's shoulder, nearly trampled the vet. But if you've got the skill, or the courage, here's your prize." Laughter rose, but not kindly. It was the laughter people used to cover discomfort, or to distance themselves from something they didn't understand. The crowd shifted, murmuring, but no hands rose. The stallion reared slightly, ropes jerking taut as handlers grunted to keep control. Somewhere in the background, a child cried, quickly hushed. Then a voice cut through the drizzle, calm and steady. "I'll take him." Heads turned. She stood just outside the front row, a woman in a long gray coat, frayed at the cuffs, her boots stained with years of work and rain. She wasn't young, but not yet old either, somewhere in the middle, the kind of age that knows more about loss than hope. Her hair was pulled back, damp wisps framing a face carved by quiet endurance. She raised her hand without hesitation, as if this moment had already happened in her mind, and now she was simply watching it unfold. "Name?" the auctioneer asked, suspicious. "Elena. Do you have a bidding number?" She stepped forward and held up a card. "Number 22. The crowd stirred. A man in a brown coat leaned over to someone beside him. "Isn't that the woman from the Miller property? The one who—" "Yeah," the other whispered. "The one who lost her kid. Crazy, they say." "No one else?" the auctioneer barked, scanning for raised hands. "Going once, going twice." "Wait," a voice called from the far side. It was more of a dare than an offer. "You throw in a muzzle and a saddle, and I'll take him for half." The auctioneer smirked, but Elena didn't move. Her voice came again, calm as before. "I'll pay full." A pause. "Then sold. To bidder 22. May God be with you." The handlers glanced at each other. One said something under his breath. Elena walked slowly toward the ring. The stallion saw her and tensed, eyes narrowing, head tossing violently. One of the handlers tightened his grip, warning her not to come closer. "He's dangerous, ma'am," he said. "So am I," she replied. The men stared as she reached the gate. Her eyes met the horses, and something in her expression shifted. Not pity, not fear, but recognition, as though she saw not a beast, but a reflection. He snorted again, pawed at the ground, but didn't rear this time. The lead rope was handed over like a bomb with the pin removed. Elena took it with steady hands. The rain slicked her coat as she turned and began walking. The stallion resisted, dug in hard, body taut with rebellion. But she didn't pull. She waited. The rope slackened. One step, then another. The crowd watched in silent awe as the massive stallion followed her, muscles coiled, head lowered but eyes alert. It wasn't submission. It was something else. Like he was watching her just as closely, unsure whether to trust or strike. She led him down the path toward the lot where her truck and trailer waited. Old, dented, but reliable. A young stable hand jogged up with the gate keys, wide-eyed. "Lady, you really gonna take that thing home alone?" "Yes." "You got anyone to help you load him?" "No." He kicked a hole through the last trailer. "Just saying that. I'm not asking him to get in," she said. "I'm asking him to choose." The boy blinked. "That's not how it works." "It's how it's going to work today." She opened the trailer gate and stood to the side, not looking at the horse. Rain tapped gently on the aluminum roof. For a long moment, nothing happened. The horse snorted, sniffed the air. Then, with slow, careful steps, he moved forward. One hoof on the ramp. Then two. Inside. The boy's jaw dropped. Elena closed the gate behind him, not triumphantly, but with the quiet finality of someone who just confirmed what they already knew. She didn't speak the entire drive home. The horse, strangely, didn't make a sound. When she pulled into the long gravel road leading to her property, overgrown, wild, ringed by trees that had forgotten they were once part of a ranch, she parked beside the old barn. She opened the trailer and waited. He stepped out on his own. The barn was clean but bare. 2 stalls, 1 hay pile, a few blankets folded on the wall. She led him inside and unclipped the rope. He didn't bolt, just looked around like a king inspecting an unfamiliar throne. There was no ceremony. She poured oats, set water, and sat on an upturned bucket near the stall door, watching, breathing. Rain eased into a soft drizzle. The only sound was the chewing of hay, then a sudden, sharp stomp. He kicked the back wall of the stall hard enough to rattle the boards. Elena didn't flinch. "I know," she whispered. "It's not enough. It's not freedom, but it's something." He stared at her, eyes flickering with something older than fear, something close to sorrow. She didn't try to touch him. She just stayed. Night fell slowly, dragging shadows across the barn floor. Wind picked up outside. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Elena lit a small lamp and sat in its dim glow, her eyes tired but alert. The stallion hadn't laid down, but he hadn't tried to escape either. For now, that was enough. At some point past midnight, she leaned back against the wall, eyes fluttering shut. Her hand rested near the stall gate. The horse stepped forward silently, lowered his head toward her fingers, and breathed in. She didn't wake, but she smiled. By morning, the storm had passed, but something had already begun to change. The next time she opened the stall door, she left it wide. She didn't look back as she walked away, and the untamable horse watched her go, head high, ears forward, waiting, not for an order, but for an invitation. The sun filtered through the tattered roof of the barn the next morning, painting dusty golden lines across the stallion's back. Elena stood outside the stall, watching him eat. His ribs showed less under the morning light than she remembered from the night before. Or maybe it was the way he moved now, less like a coiled spring and more like a shadow searching for warmth. She had named him Cairo, quietly, sometime in the dead hours of night when sleep refused to come. It meant victory, though she didn't know if it suited him yet. He hadn't earned it. Neither had she. He hadn't touched her, hadn't bitten, hadn't reared, but there was still a chasm between them, wide and bottomless. Every movement she made was met with scrutiny. When she entered the stall to freshen water or scatter hay, his eyes tracked her like a predator's, not yet convinced she was anything more than a different kind of cage. That morning, she laid out his halter in the center of the stall, not near the wall or on a hook, just there between them. Then she walked out and left the barn door open. For the next 3 days, Elena kept to a careful rhythm. Feed at dawn, fresh water twice daily, stalls cleaned in silence. She made no attempt to touch him, but she sang softly when the wind picked up. Old folk tunes with no beginning and no end, songs her mother once hummed by the stove, back when life was simpler and grief was a stranger. Cairo watched her with growing curiosity. When she sat near the stall, sipping coffee from a dented tin cup, he edged closer. Once, his breath stirred her collar, but she didn't turn. He backed off immediately, startled by his own boldness. It was on the 4th day that he nickered. Just once, low and unsure. Elena froze mid-step. She turned, slowly. Their eyes met. Not a stare-off, not dominance. Just recognition. She reached for the halter. This time, he didn't shy away. Her fingers brushed his cheek. He flinched, but didn't bolt. She slid the halter over his ears, buckled it, and stepped back, half expecting him to thrash. But Cairo stood still. Not trusting, not yielding, just still. She led him outside that morning, into the paddock behind the barn. The fence was worn, but it would hold. For a while, he stood like he didn't understand the concept of grass beneath his hooves. Then he trotted, ears twitching at the sounds of birds overhead. Elena leaned on the fence rail and watched him run. Not wildly, not with panic, but with long, sweeping strides that reminded her of stories she used to tell her son before bed. Stories of kings in exile, of winged creatures reborn as horses, of wild spirits tamed only by love. But love was a dangerous thing, especially when it had already cost you everything. Later that evening, after the sky turned violet and the chill returned, Elena pulled out an old notebook. She flipped through the pages, mostly blank now, except for the jagged words of a grief-stricken woman who had once tried to pour herself into poetry and prayers and came up empty. She started a new page. Day 4. Cairo let me lead him. There's fire in him, but I think it's more pain than rage. I know the difference. I haven't let anyone near him yet. They'd ruin it. They'd try to tame him. I don't want him tamed. I want him to remember who he was before the fear. She closed the book and set it on the window ledge. That night, something woke her. A sound sharp, frantic. She rushed to the barn, boots half-laced, coat thrown over her nightgown. Cairo was kicking the stall door, eyes wild, breath ragged. Thunder cracked overhead. Lightning lit the sky. She understood in an instant. Storms. She opened the stall and stepped in without hesitation. He backed into a corner, teeth bared, nostrils flared. She didn't flinch, just whispered to him, voice calm and steady. It's all right. I'm here. Another flash. Another crack. Cairo reared, and for a second she thought he'd strike her down. But her voice didn't waver. Easy, boy. It's just noise. Just wind. He paced, circled, then stopped near her. He was trembling. She lifted her hand, very slowly, and laid it against his neck. His skin was hot, damp with fear. But he didn't pull away. For the first time, he leaned into her. She stayed like that for over an hour, stroking his neck, murmuring nonsense and lullabies. When the storm passed, the air smelled of wet earth and burnt sky. Cairo was quiet, still alert, but quieter. She knew now. His fear wasn't of her. It was of what came without warning, what broke fences and hearts and left you breathless in the dark. Like grief. She didn't sleep that night. She sat outside his stall, legs curled beneath her, watching him sleep for the first time. Not just lie down, but sleep. The next day, she called Dr. Mora. "You're working with the auction horse?" the vet asked, stunned. "You're braver than I thought. I need you to come out. He's got scars on his flank that look infected, and I think his teeth need floating." Dr. Mora hesitated. "You sure he won't kill me?" "He let me touch him." "Touching isn't trusting." "I know. Just come prepared." When the vet arrived, Elena met him outside with gloves, a mask, and a tranquilizer on hand. But to both their surprise, Cairo stood like a soldier during the exam, tense but obedient. "He's got nerve damage near the spine," Dr. Morris said, checking the scars. "Probably from blunt trauma. A kick or a fall. Maybe a whip. You'll never know. I don't need to know. Most people would. I'm not most people." Dr. Morris smiled faintly. "You're not." He cleaned the wound, filed Cairo's teeth, and gave her a list of supplements. Before leaving, he asked, "Why him? Why now?" Elena watched Cairo through the stall bars. "Because everyone gave up on him, and I know what that feels like." She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to. That evening, she left the stall gate open again. Cairo didn't wander far. He followed her to the field's edge, where the forest line met the ranch. She stopped there and turned. "I used to come here with my son," she said softly. "He loved the trees. Said they whispered secrets when the wind blew." Cairo lowered his head, as if listening. "He's buried just beyond the oak." The words hung between them. Cairo stepped beside her. His shoulder brushed hers. She didn't cry. Not yet. But her chest ached in that hollow, old way. And for the first time, it didn't feel empty. Just unfinished. She ran her fingers along Cairo's mane. He leaned into her. Night crept up again, but neither moved. They stood there, side by side, two survivors in the stillness. When they walked back, it was together. No rope, no reins, Just choice. Cairo's coat gleamed in the early spring light, brushed smooth by Elena's steady hands and the weeks of silent, patient work that had passed since the storm. The air smelled of thawing earth and pine, and the ranch, though old and worn, carried a new weight now, like something long buried had started to breathe again. Elena stood in the center of the paddock, halter in hand, and waited. No commands, no coaxing, just presence. Cairo walked to her, without hesitation. He still held himself like a warrior, watchful, taut with instinct, but his eyes were different. Less glassy, more grounded. He didn't flinch at her movements anymore. He listened when she spoke. And sometimes, when the wind blew across the pasture, he'd stand beside her for minutes at a time, neither moving, both listening to nothing and everything. But progress was never linear. That morning, as she prepared to lead him through a short trail walk near the edge of the woods, she heard the crunch of tires on gravel. A beat-up truck, with county plates pulled up to the barn, and from it stepped a woman Elena hadn't seen in nearly a year. Liza Camden, county equine inspector, and former friend. Elena's shoulders tensed. She looped the lead around her hand and met Liza halfway across the barnyard. "Heard through the grapevine you took in the Bay Ghost," Liza said, giving a nod toward Cairo. "Didn't believe it." "I did. Didn't think you were looking to rebuild." "I wasn't." Liza studied her. "That horse put 3 men in the hospital. He's dangerous. He's hurting. Same thing sometimes." They stood in the silence of wind and birdsong and distant hoofbeats. Finally, Liza crossed her arms. "County's getting nervous. Technically, he's still flagged under auction trauma protocol. Means he's on a watch list. You get one incident, and they'll come down hard." "I haven't had one." "Yet." "Elena, I'm saying this as someone who knows what you've been through. This isn't the kind of fight you win quietly." "I don't need to win," Elena replied. "I just need him to know someone stayed." Liza looked past her toward Cairo. He pawed the earth, snorted, and trotted in a tight circle. "He doesn't look broken." "That's the point." After Liza left, Elena spent the better part of the day replaying the conversation. Not because of fear, but because of the truth in it. The county wouldn't understand nuance. If Cairo ever so much as pinned his ears at a passerby, they could come for him. The thought made her blood run cold. She hadn't saved him just to watch the system erase him again. The next week, she started groundwork training in earnest. Not for competition, not for display, but to give him language. Signals. Safety. She set up cones. Flags. A simple gate obstacle. At first, Cairo circled and avoided everything, nostrils wide, ears on alert. But Elena stayed centered, voice calm. When he stopped, she rewarded. When he stepped back, she didn't punish. She waited. And he began to learn. Not just the movements, but the trust. She introduced a saddle one quiet afternoon, laying it gently on his back without cinching. He tensed but didn't bolt. The next day, she added the girth. He reared once, half-heartedly, then stood. On the third day, she mounted for 5 seconds. Just 5. Each moment a victory. Every step forward, a thread sewn into the tapestry of his healing. Word of the horse spread, as it always did in small towns. Locals stopped by the fence to watch. A boy on a bicycle shouted, "That's the crazy horse from the fairgrounds." Elena kept her replies to herself. What did they know? But the attention forced her to make a decision. Cairo needed legitimacy now, not just sanctuary. So she entered him, quietly, anonymously, into the county training show. Not to win, not even to place, just to be seen. When the day arrived, Elena brushed him for an hour, cleaned every hoof, conditioned every inch of his coat. She braided his mane and packed her old saddle, still marked by years of wear. When she walked him into the trailer, he hesitated for a single breath, then stepped up. The showgrounds were crowded, colorful, overwhelming. Cairo stiffened the moment he stepped out. Horses screamed in nearby stalls. Loudspeakers crackled with announcements. Children ran, vendors shouted. His muscles rippled like water beneath her hands. "Easy," she whispered. He tossed his head. She led him to the warm-up ring, ignoring the glances, the whispers. A few competitors murmured when they saw him. One girl nudged her friend. "That's him. The auction horse. The one that went feral." Elena heard every word. So did Cairo. She stopped, touched his neck. "You don't owe them anything," she said, not caring who heard. "You just do what you can. That's all." When their number was called, they entered the arena. It wasn't a complicated test. Walk, trot, turn. Back up. Halt. But the ground was foreign. The air was thick with judgment. Cairo's ears flicked in every direction. Elena kept her hands light on the reins, her legs steady. He moved stiffly at first. A clumsy turn. A slight buck. The judge scribbled notes. Then something shifted. As they turned toward the arena's north end, the crowd fell momentarily quiet. The speakers paused. The wind moved through a stand of trees behind the grandstand. Elena exhaled. Cairo relaxed his neck. They trotted. For 30 seconds, they were not a trauma case. Not a cautionary tale. They were horse and rider. Whole. Present. Free. When they halted at X, Elena dismounted slowly. She met the judge's eyes, offered a nod, and walked Cairo from the arena like they'd just finished a private ritual, not a public display. She didn't stay for the scores. Didn't need to. Back at the trailer, a woman approached. Late 40s, worn boots, calloused hands. "I saw you ride," she said. "He's got fire, but your seat's softer than most trainers I've seen." "I'm not a trainer." "You are now." Elena didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. Cairo nudged her side, impatient. She smiled. "You want a second chance?" the woman asked. "There's a regional series. Starts next month. Low stakes, but it might buy you some legitimacy. Keep the county off your back." Elena glanced at the woman's truck. A logo on the door, Granite Ridge Equine Rescue. "You run a rehab?" 15 years. I've seen worse than him. Not many, but some. What do you think his chances are?" The woman shrugged. "Depends on who's holding the reins." The next morning, Elena stood in the barn with a blank entry form in one hand and Cairo's halter in the other. The papers meant more attention, more risk, but also more voice. If they placed, even once, it would prove he wasn't a threat, that he was trainable, that he mattered. She bent down, scribbled her name across the line. Cairo watched from the stall. Later that day, as she walked him through the back pasture, he paused at the crest of a hill. Below them lay the ranch, humble, weathered, but alive. Beyond that, the town. Elena stepped beside him. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. They stood there, wind in their hair, the promise of a new trial ahead. Not one forced on them by life, but one they had chosen. Together. The wind carried a biting chill through the open gates of the regional fairgrounds, brushing dust against the banners strung above the main arena. Elena tightened the straps of her weathered gloves and glanced at the sky, gray with hints of early spring rain. The showgrounds buzzed with activity. Announcers on crackling loudspeakers, horses prancing nervously in warm-up rings, trainers barking orders, and the hum of restless anticipation among the crowd. But in the middle of it all stood Cairo, still, alert, and heartbreakingly regal. They had come far in the past few weeks, through long, quiet rides at dawn, endless groundwork under moonlight, and whispered encouragements spoken when no one else was around. The bond between them had grown into something wordless and sacred. Yet even now, Elena knew all it would take was one wrong step, one echo from his past, and the delicate trust could unravel. She didn't clip a ribbon to his mane. She didn't braid his tail. She wanted no distractions, only honesty. Cairo moved with the power of something unbroken by force, only softened by choice. The regional show had drawn riders from across the county, each more polished than the last. The stables shimmered with horses groomed like glass. Their riders wore pristine gear, practiced smiles, and eyes sharp with judgment. Elena, in contrast, looked as if she'd stepped out of an old photograph, boots scuffed, jeans dusty, and a jacket mended at the sleeves. Yet when she walked Cairo past the other riders, heads turned, some with curiosity, others with concern, a few with open disdain. "That's the one from the county show," a young man muttered. "The wild auction stallion." "Isn't he flagged?" another girl whispered. Elena kept her eyes forward. She didn't know them answers. A tall woman with red hair and an embroidered vest stopped near the warm-up ring. She looked Elena over once, then Cairo, then back. "You're the girl from the rescue circuit." "I'm not with a rescue." "No. You train on your own." Elena nodded. "Just him and me." The woman studied her. "He looks like he remembers who he used to be." Elena didn't respond. The first event was a basic obstacle test: bridges, cones, tight circles, and a narrow alleyway lined with flags, designed to test composure more than skill. As she mounted and took the reins, Cairo shifted his weight, but didn't resist. His ears flicked back toward her, waiting. "You don't need to be perfect," she murmured. "You just need to be present." Their number was called. They entered the ring in silence. At first, everything held together. He stepped lightly over the bridge, curved around the cones with surprising grace. But as they approached the alley of fluttering flags, he hesitated. The fabric snapped in the wind, harsh and fast like whips, and he stopped cold. Elena could feel his muscles bunching beneath the saddle, his chest tightening with old ghosts. Someone in the crowd laughed, sharp, cruel. She leaned forward, lowered her voice. "I'm here." Cairo trembled, then lifted his head, nostrils flaring. The flags kept snapping. He could turn. He could rear. But he didn't. He stepped forward. One hoof, then another. The crowd fell silent. They crossed the alley without incident. And when they exited, Elena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. The judges didn't smile, didn't nod. But they didn't disqualify her either. Later that afternoon, in the holding pen before the final event, Elena leaned against the fence and watched the others. Young riders laughed with their friends. Trainers offered last-minute corrections. But she stood alone with Cairo, brushing dust from his shoulder, hands slow and steady. Liza appeared without warning, stepping out from the crowd with a clipboard under one arm. "Elena, I figured they'd send someone." "I'm not here on county business." "No, I came because I heard what you did at the last show, and I wanted to see for myself." Elena raised an eyebrow. "See what?" "If the girl I knew still existed somewhere in there." "I'm not the same." Liza nodded. "None of us are." She reached over the fence and gently stroked Cairo's neck. He didn't flinch. He didn't retreat. "Seems he isn't either," she said. Elena waited a moment, then asked, "Do you think I'm being foolish?" "I think you're walking a tightrope, but you're doing it with your eyes open." Their final event was a freestyle demonstration. 3 minutes to display trust, connection, and communication. Most riders used music, props, and intricate routines. Elena brought none of that. Just herself, her horse, and the dusty arena. When their turn came, she entered slowly. The audience, weary after a long day, murmured but didn't clap. There were no bright colors, no sharp movements. Only Elena, standing in the middle of the ring, reins loose in her hand. She dropped them entirely and stepped away. Gasps rippled through the bleachers. Cairo stood unmoving. Elena walked to the edge of the ring, then turned. She whistled. Cairo flicked an ear. She whistled again. And he moved. Not with fear. Not with hesitation. He walked toward her. The arena seemed to hold its breath. She raised her hand, and he stopped. She stepped forward, and he backed up. She knelt to the ground, and he lowered his head until his nose brushed her shoulder. No commands. No force. Only trust. By the time their 3 minutes ended, no one spoke. Not even the judges. Elena stood, bowed her head once, and led Cairo from the arena. She didn't care about scores. She had already won what mattered. As they loaded the trailer that evening, a man approached from the sidelines, broad-shouldered, clean-cut, with a quiet intensity in his eyes. "You work with troubled horses?" he asked. "I work with horses who've been given up on. I have a filly, 6 months old. Spooks at everything. Kicked her handler last week. Vet says to put her down." Elena looked at him. "Why come to me? I saw what you did in there, and maybe I want to believe something different." She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. As the trailer door shut behind Cairo, she leaned against the metal and stared at the fading fairground lights. Her heart felt full and hollow at once, like she'd given a piece of herself to the arena floor and couldn't take it back. Liza stepped beside her once more. You proved them wrong. I wasn't trying to. That's why it mattered. They drove home in silence, stars sharp above them, road stretching endlessly ahead. Cairo shifted only once during the ride, then settled. When they arrived back at the ranch, Elena led him into the pasture. He didn't bolt, didn't retreat. He stood beside her, shoulder brushing hers, breath slow and warm. She removed the halter. You're free now, she whispered. Not because I gave it to you, but because you chose it. Cairo stood a moment longer. Then he turned and walked into the field. No fences held him. No reins guided him. But he stopped halfway, looked back, and waited. Elena stepped forward. Together, under the hush of stars, they walked into the dark, no longer haunted, no longer hunted. Just whole.